Today I'm doing my in-the-field review of the Nikon Z5 II camera. Okay, camera specs. Let's just touch on that real quick. I'm not going to dwell on it in this particular video. It's been out long enough. You've probably already memorized them from the Nikon's website. I will put them here on the screen though, just for you to look at, refresh your memory. It's all pretty basic, and like I said, you're probably well familiar about what the specs are of this camera if you're watching it, but here they are just in case. So I've had this camera now for about 2.5 months or so, and I did do a video on the camera when I first got it, or actually a couple weeks after I'd had it and had it in the field, just a couple times, very minimally used, just to sort of give my first impressions of the camera, because I've been able to hold on to it and sort of feel it and be more than just what I'd read about. And I'll link to that video down in the description below. And really, a lot of the things I talked about in that video hold to be true today, but just now I've had a lot more use with the camera, both handheld use, which it's done very well at, as well as out on a tripod, lots of different trips, lots of different types of scenes and things like that. So I feel like I've got a better feel for the camera, what's working well, what isn't, and so on. But first, before we dive into my thoughts about it, let's talk about my path here and how we got here. So just in case you're new to the channel and this is one of your first videos you've seen of mine, you didn't see my first impressions of the Nikon Z5 II, let me tell you just a little bit about myself. My name is Jeffrey Tadlock, of course, and I am a landscape photographer. It's predominantly all I do these days is photograph landscapes. So anything I talk about with this camera is very much from a landscape photographer perspective. And I'm not talking events, I'm not talking photographing wildlife or photographing people. It's for a landscape photographer. So all of my feedback, comments, thoughts, everything like that is keep that in mind. Now, how did I get here? So prior to getting this camera, I typically carried 2 camera bodies into the field. I use a Nikon Z7 II as my primary landscape photography camera, 45 megapixels. It's my main camera. It's the one that gets set up on the tripod. It's the first camera I go to. Now I carry a second camera into the field, partially as a backup, just in case something were to happen to my Nikon Z7 II while I'm out in the field. And it's also super handy because if I've got my Nikon Z7 II set up on a tripod, photographing some scene, waiting for the light to unfold, I can grab a second camera, do a lot of handheld shots, and really get some pretty cool images while I'm waiting for something to unfold. So that's essentially what my setup was going into the field. Now I passed on the Nikon Z8, super great camera. I mean, there's no denying that. This Nikon Z8 is a great camera. I object to the size of the camera. I want my camera a little smaller. One of the benefits of mirrorless is supposed to be the smaller, lighter camera size. And I have had a really hard time accepting that the Z8's a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. At this point, I'm probably just being stubborn about it, but that's how I am. And at the moment, I'm not looking at the Z8 and I passed on that. The Z6 III came out and I passed on that. It didn't feel like a big enough upgrade to the Z6 II to warrant it. And then finally the Z5 II was announced, and it was at an attractive price point. I did start to feel like, I sort of need to keep up with what's going on with the Nikon camera systems, partially for the YouTube channel. I like to know what's going on in the menus. It does have some of the newer features some of the newer models had. So, maybe I should pick up the Z5 II, and I can justify it by upgrading my Z6 II to the Z5 II. And that's what I did, and that's how I ended up with the Nikon Z5 II. So now that I've had the camera for a couple months, I've had a great opportunity to get it out and use it more. I've been using it handheld, been using it on the tripod, been using it in lots of different situations. I've been using it to photograph some woodland scenes. I've been doing some overlook scenes here in the New River Gorge, which is where I'm at right now as I record this video. And I've even been trying to use it a little more and choosing it over my Z7 II just to get the experience with it. Might have been a situation I normally would have grabbed the Z7 II, but because I want to really put this thing through its paces, I've been grabbing it. And it's been working out really well. In fact, a lot of my first impressions that I had in that first impressions video really remain to be true today. Let's go over some of the positives I've seen that I continue to feel like are still towards the positive side. We're going to hit the first one, the little more awkward one first, and that's the flippy screen right here. Z7 II only has a one-way tilt screen like this, so it makes low-angled portrait positions really difficult to do because it's hard to see the screen unless you really get down on your belly and take a look at it. This makes it easier because you've got your tilt screen, so you can tilt and do everything like that. You can even flip it around if you are doing video, so you've got the selfie piece. It's nice. It's a pro. I mean, it's good to have. It definitely makes those portrait scenes better. I sort of wish it was just a two-way tilt. It'd make a couple things easier, I think. It'd feel a little more rugged. I'm not a big fan of always having to take it all the way out to the left like that. I don't know. Overall, it's a positive. I sort of wish it was a two-way tilt, but we'll get through it. I mentioned in the first impressions video that I felt like this camera was fast. And that was, again, a handful of times. This camera is fast. It is noticeably faster than my Nikon Z7 II. Well, what do I mean when I say it's fast? It finds focus fast. It moves its focus point fast. So if I'm trying to move a focus point in a scene, it moves very quickly. Menus are fast. Clicking through menus, even the I menu when I'm trying to get to something, it pops up on the screen fast. It is just a fast camera. Image review is fast. It's noticeably faster than my Z7 II. And anyone that's watched my videos for some time knows I'm a big one about efficiency and being efficient in the field, and I'll make decisions that make me more efficient. This thing makes you very efficient with how quickly you can get through menus and how much more effective it can make you out in the field. The other thing I touched on is I mentioned it felt like the in-body image stabilization was really good. The Z5 II has up to 7.5 stops of IBIS in it. And I'll tell you, I commented in that first impressions video, it's noticeably better. I really, really like the in-body image stabilization in this. Everything is super stable. I find it pairs really well with the 100 to 400 millimeter lens. I mentioned it earlier, a lot of times my second camera body will be the one I shoot handheld. So what'll happen is I'll put my 24 to 120 on my Z7 II, get the grand scene, you know, some big scene going on, waiting for the light to be just right, and I'll throw my 100 to 400 on my second camera body, and paired with the Z5 II, I feel like I'm rock solid steady. Not only is it super stable, but it gets stable really fast. So when I'm with that 100 to 400 zoomed way out to 400 millimeters, it locks in so fast. I attribute part of that just to 7.5 stops of IBIS. Paired with the speed of the camera, it must be matching together just to make it a really great experience. So super happy with the in-body image stabilization on this camera. It's been super helpful and really let me pull off some shots I might not otherwise be able to do. And then finally, a small one, and really I do sort of wish I could play with this one a little more, but it's got Starlight View. Starlight View is for those early mornings or late evenings when it's getting dark, your camera's starting to have a harder time finding focus. You can put it in the Starlight View mode and it lets it find focus faster. It makes the display brighter, helps it get its focus faster. It's just a pretty neat little feature. It came out first, I think it was first on the Z8. Don't know if the Z9 had it, but the Z8 had it. And I saw some workshop participants with it, and I was like, that's pretty cool. So I do have it on here. It is pretty neat. I actually mapped it to my function 2 button, so it's really easy to use. If I'm in low light, I can just hit that button, get in the Starlight View, and get that focus and really work in those lower light scenes a little more confidently. So pretty cool feature there. I need to do a little more time with it, and maybe we'll do a video on Starlight View in the future where we dive more in depth and a little more demonstration of what it can do and what it doesn't do. And now what about what I don't like? We already touched on the flippy screen. I think I'd rather have two-way tilt, so I'm not going to belabor that point anymore, much more. A little bit more. Super handy for the portrait stuff. I'm not a huge fan of the flippy screen. I don't think maybe it'll grow on me I keep using it and I'll start to see the pros. I'm still sort of putting it in the pro column because the low angle portrait view is nice. Just wish it was a two-way tilt instead. Button placement. Now this one probably mainly affects me because I'm so used to the Nikon Z6 IIs and Z7 IIs, and when I was carrying both of those, the button placement was exactly the same. In fact, the only way I could tell if I was using my Z6 II or my Z7 II was by the color of the L bracket I had on it. My Z7 II had an orange L bracket, and my Z6 II had a gray L bracket, and that's it. Buttons were all the same, everything was great. With the Z5 II, they switched a couple of the buttons around, one of the big ones being the playback button. So take a picture, I don't have automatic image review on, but if I want to look at something, it's really taken me a long time to remember where the playback button is. It's in a different spot. You know, the setting dial up here, it's on the right-hand side because the Z5 II doesn't have the top LCD, so the dial moved from the left to the right. That one's not quite as bad, that one I can get pretty used to, but that playback button gets me every time. Small thing, if this is going to be your first Nikon camera, it's irrelevant, not going to make a difference, but I do have to do that muscle memory adjustment when I'm switching between the two camera bodies. It's not quite as fast as it used to be. I'm sure I'll get to it as I get even more time, or maybe they come out with something that tempts me to move away from the Z7 II and it'll match, but for now it's a little bit of a battle with the muscle memory on that. And this last one, it really isn't a fault of Nikon, but I do want to mention it just because if you're looking at a Z5 II and you're anywhere as big of an L bracket user as I am, this could be a frustrating point, and that's right now Trying to find a reasonably priced L bracket that is made to fit the camera is difficult. My Z6 II, Z7 II L brackets don't fit on here. They get in the way of the flippy screen, so I can't really open it or use it correctly. So because there isn't a custom fit L bracket, I did go with an inexpensive universal L bracket from Sunway Photo. It does fine, it fits in, it's nice and secure. I can use my flippy screen like I'm supposed to be able to do, and it's all good. The problem is it sticks out on the left because it's a universal bracket. It doesn't custom fit. And because of that, my complaint about the Z8 is because it's too bulky, right? Well, I've added bulk to this. So you're getting to the point, like, I complain so much about the Z8 being bigger, but yet I've got a universal L bracket. I keep holding hope one of the L bracket vendors will release a reasonably priced L bracket. I think Kirk either has one or is in the process of making one. Small Rig, I think, is in the process of making one, not available in the US. Once that is fixed, I think that'll go away. But again, not a Nikon problem, just I feel like because I value an L bracket so much, it's something to be aware of that they're not quite there just yet for the Nikon Z5 IIs. Okay, so what are my overall thoughts of this camera now that I've used it and had it out on several different trips and different types of trips and handheld and tripod? First, love the speed. The speed is great. That is amazing. I really, really like the speed. The IBIS, great. It's really helped me be more stable. Anyone that watches my videos know I like coffee, I drink a lot of coffee, and I actually let people know I can't handhold stuff at as slow of a shutter speed as a lot of people just because I drink a lot of coffee. So I usually double my focal length a lot of times in order to handhold something. The IBIS on this is just amazing. I was out this morning in some fog using this camera, and 100 to 400 and 400 millimeters, 1/120th of a second. I might even been a little slower, and it felt stable. There's no winds, the leaves weren't blowing or anything like that, but IBIS is really great. Very impressed with that. Image quality wise, sort of glossed over that with all the actual tactile features and functions. Image quality wise, again, I enjoy the Z7 II with its 45 megapixels. I like to be able to crop a little bit in post, but with that said, 24 megapixels never held me back. Even with the Z6 II, Z7 II, no one has ever asked me, which camera did you shoot that with? Because they can't tell. If you're a little more deliberate with your composition on a 24 megapixel camera, you'll be just fine. The image quality is great. Like I said, I've shot 24 megapixel for a long time with the Z6 II. This is no different. The image quality is great. There's no problems with it. I will say I've heard some people say there's some white balance problems with, not so much with the Nikon, but how Adobe products treat the Nikon file. I'm completely up to date on my Adobe Lightroom. I really have not seen it, but with that said, a lot of times I set my white balance to something specific, usually either daylight or 5600, something like that. So I'm usually adjusting white balance anyways and post processing. So it may be that's why I'm not noticing as much. Maybe if you're expecting the camera to do auto white balance and bring it into Lightroom and look great, maybe that's where people are seeing some of the difference. It's been more than one person that said it though. So it's been, I had a commenter on my videos comment on it, and then I've seen it online as well in some other places. So it does seem to be something going on. I think maybe the reason I don't see it is because a lot of times, like I said, I manual white balance and then I'm making tweaks anyways. So I'm just used to making adjustments. So I'm not picking up that it's not being as true to what I saw on the camera, but just be aware of that. It hasn't been a problem for me, but just something to be aware of. So where does that leave us? Well, really it leaves us with Nikon has come out with a really great, essentially what they call an entry-level camera, but has a ton of features, has more features than my Z6 II, at a pretty reasonable price for a full-frame camera. So for landscape photographers, I think it's a really great camera, and it's a great ad by Nikon. It's nice to see them releasing and trickling down those feature sets from the more advanced flagship cameras into some other cameras that someone newer to the hobby might be looking for, or someone like me that even this essentially as an entry-level camera was an upgrade to my Z6 II in my opinion, and it's been working out great for my landscape photography. Okay, but that does leave us with two big questions, right? I think the two biggest questions I get asked once we sort of get over, okay, we get it, Jeffrey, you like the Z5 II, you're happy with it, your first impressions video had us leaving that. So the two big questions I get, Z5 II or Z6 III? And I'll be honest, I've actually thought, should I have just gone with the Z6 III? I would have had my top LCD thing here. It could do video, would do very nice video, but I don't really use these cameras for video. I'm recording this on my DJI Pocket 3, which is what I use for the majority of my in-the-field videos. I use a Nikon Z30 for my office videos. I'm not really using these cameras out in the field as video cameras. Super nice now that I do have a flippy screen that could double as a video camera, but even then, I'm just making YouTube videos, nothing super fancy. So because of that, because I don't really rely on a lot of the video, I feel like the Z5 II is just great. Saved me some money and gave me every feature that I would really practically use. So anytime I start thinking, should I have just bought the Z6 III? I try to look at it and think, what would I be using? And there's no compelling reason to do it. So if you do a lot of video, then you may want to consider the Z6 III. It's going to be a great all-around camera, very powerful hybrid camera. But for me, where I'm really stills photography focused and emphasis, the Z5 II works just great, saved me some money along the way. Okay, the next one, Z5 II or Z7 II. The Z7 II is getting old. I forget what year it released, but 2021, late 2020, early 2021, something like that. So it's getting to be an older camera. You got the Z5 II, which, again, it's noticeably faster than my Z7 II. But with that said, if you're only doing landscape photography, I have a really hard time not recommending the Z7 II. I enjoy the extra megapixels. Again, it's not so much changing your image quality, in my opinion, as much as it gives me more flexibility to crop something if I want to. And I'm a habitual cropper. That's just how it is. I can be more diligent with the 24 megapixel cameras, and it works. I'm doing it with the Z5 II. But if you're just landscape photography, I still lean towards the Z7 II. With that said, if you do anything other than landscape photography, if you do wildlife and more than just what I do, like wildlife wanders in the scene, but you're out actively trying to do it, the speed and performance of the Z5 II, I really think it's just a no-brainer. The Z5 II is where you're going to want to go. The speed it brings with the autofocus and just everything in general, the in-body image stabilization, just really great. If you're photographing families, pets, portraits, events, your kids' game, and you're not going to be like me and just take your cameras to do landscape photography, but you're using for other things, the Z5 II is just, man, it's a really much more compelling reason. So, like I said, it's a tough choice. I'm still going to use my Z7 II as my main camera predominantly, but this has been seeing plenty of use. So, you know, not a solid answer. You just really got to think about your own usage of the camera, how you're going to use it, what do you do, and then sort of figure out where it comes in. Only landscape photography, I give the edge to the Nikon Z7 II. Once you break out of landscape photography, the edge, I think, goes to the Z5 II. Just such a great camera. For my usage, I'm super happy with this camera. It pairs really well with my Z7 II. So my current load now is the Z7 II as my main camera, Z5 II as my secondary camera. Works great, especially in those handheld situations. I do think it's made a better secondary camera than my Z6 II. So real happy with my setup. It's been a great camera for me. So anyways, I hope that helps. I'm happy to answer any questions about the Z5 II, Z7 II, Z6 II, Nikon and landscape photography in general. Feel free to leave a question down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them in a timely fashion. And I'll also link to a couple of videos I think you'll find helpful. And thank you for watching.